Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to have a chat about an upcoming feature to The Division 2 that, as I have said before, I'm immensely excited for, but as I also want to lay out in this video, I have some trepidations about. We are, of course, talking about the Specialization Rework, which, if you were not aware, is something that is coming to the game presumably in the next major update, TU16. It was a feature announced and slated to be coming alongside TU15, but unfortunately it had to be pushed back, which sucks. I am still super stoked about this change being brought to the game. Revamping specializations and adding stuff like a full skill tree is something that I was suggesting they do all the way back in year 1, and so I'm super happy to see it now coming in year 4. I think it's representational of exactly the type of change and freedom of change we are now seeing the devs take on with year 4 as a whole, and so yeah, I'm super excited for it. But along with that excitement is some skepticism, because as early as when they released the initial article outlining some of their plans with this rework last October, I immediately saw some red flags. Not things that are necessarily doomed to be problematic, but I fear may be, especially if there aren't any additional supplementary changes the devs plan on making that could potentially address some of these issues. So I had wanted to make this video for quite some time, and I'm finally getting around to it, and more than anything, I just wanted to make this as a bit of a PSA for the devs and the community for a few trouble spots I'm seeing with this upcoming rework, and hopefully, if others agree with me that these things might be problematic, could be addressed before they ever even become an issue, either before or during the PTS phase for the coming update, which again should be taking place sometime next month. And again, just to be clear, we don't have any official confirmation to my knowledge that the spec rework is coming alongside TU16. All we know was that it was delayed later into year 4, but from what we've heard, it sounds like it's coming along pretty well, and frankly, even if it comes in TU17 or whatever, the issues that I raised in this video will still apply, so I still want to be making this a video. That's enough of an intro. Hopefully that provides you with whatever context you may have needed. Let's just dive in. Here are some of my concerns with the upcoming specialization rework for The Division 2, a few pain points that I hope the devs can identify and address to ensure the quality and success of the otherwise super awesome sounding addition to the game. Let's jump in. So, I want to outline 3 main problems that I foresee with the specialization rework introducing, if things are going to be structured in the way that was described from that article back in October. These all revolve around PvP, as I see the spec rework truly redefining, build making and build potential in The Division 2, and amongst some of the specific changes they listed, I identified a few things that I think could be super problematic to the PvP experience in the game. So again, I hope that some of these things could be sorted out before they even have a chance to become an issue in the live game. Let's start with the first one, grenades. As was explained to us in the Spec Rework Intelligence Annex article, with this revamp, grenades are no longer going to be tied to a specific specialization. Instead, you'll now be able to use any grenade with any spec of your choosing. Now, this sounds super awesome for build diversity and just loadout creativity in general. I'm a big fan of it, but it introduces one big potential issue for PvP, and that is the Survivalist's Fire Grenade. Now, on its own, this grade isn't technically an issue. It's a useful crowd control tool and doesn't apply insane damage or anything, but what I believe is going to become a huge issue is its usage in PvP. You see, in The Division 2, fire dominates all. It completely suppresses your ability to aim down sights, which in PvP can be a death sentence, a lot of the time, and what I see becoming problematic with unlocking the fire grenade for everybody to use is that it's going to quickly become the go-to option. The reason it's not problematic right now is because it's tied to a specialization which, outside of a few specific purposes, isn't really that viable for PvP, at least compared to the likes of Firewall or Gunner. So not that many people end up running Survivalist, and therefore they don't have access to the fire grenade. But let me tell you what, when somebody is running Survivalist, I know immediately, because I get 3 flame nades rain down on me before I even can fire one shot. When they're present in PvP right now, they're noticeable, and that's just because of the way fire works as a mechanic in Div 2. It's just incredibly annoying to try and deal with, and there are absolutely ways to counter it. If I run a booster hive, I'll have an easier time mitigating the effect, all of that. But the whole reason why I'm saying I believe this is going to become an issue with the introduction of the rework is I know people are going to make it their go-to grenade, and I can already picture the nightmare of trying to fight a 4-man group who all have it on and are just continually pelting myself and my group with flame grenades. It quickly moves beyond a useful crowd control tool and just becomes a complete deterrent and roadblock to combat, and I really just don't want to see that. Without something like Final Measure in the game to counter or de-incentivize grenade spam in PvP, I'm just very worried that PvP is going to get yet another unfortunate occurrence, that being widespread fire grenade usage and spam in order to neutralize the threat of people being able to even shoot their gun, and I see that as a problem. As for a potential solution, it's hard to say. I would say the easiest way would be to make the player pick between the flame grenade and some other useful perk or trait in the new spec tree, but I don't really know how that's going to be set up and laid out. I don't know if grenades are tied to the trees or just the new unlock in the linear progression system they talked about. Frankly, I don't have a great solution for this one. I just know that after 6 years of playing Division PvP, this will be a problem, without question, if nothing is done to address it, so I'm certainly hoping that this can get on the devs' radar at the very least. Next up, the mortar turret. Similar to grenades, the Intel Annex article also let us know that each spec's skill variant will no longer be exclusive, meaning I could use the Firewall Shield with any spec, I can now use the Banshee Pulse with any spec, and we will also now be able to use the mortar turret with any spec. If you haven't encountered it before in PvP, the mortar turret is extremely problematic. I mean, it's not as bad as status effects are, for example, but it deals such high volumes of damage with such little time to react, then it can be a bit problematic. And without there being that many viable builds to spec into explosive resist with, the mortar turret is a lot of people's go-tos when they're trying to just go in and run something that's a bit more cheesy. Well, come the Specialization Rework, that's about to get a lot worse. Same with the grenades, the mortar is currently somewhat balanced in the sense that in order to use it, you have to use the Demolitionist, which is not a pretty widely used spec, and especially for a skill build, it has very little relevance besides unlocking the mortar. So not only is that restriction now going to be gone, which will lead to more people having wider access to this very strong and hard to counter skill, but it now means that you can also pair it with the Artificer Hive, the current exclusive skill for the Technician specialization, and the sheer thought of going against a full skill build, high explosive damage with the mortar and the Artificer giving it like a 40% buff or whatever the bonus is at tier 6, that's the stuff of nightmares. You're dead if you get caught inside that blast radius, no second chances, and honestly, similar to the fire grenades, without having something like Final Measure or greater counters to explosives, I just already know this is going to be a problem. So for this one, I think it has a bit of an easier solution than the fire nades. You know, with those, it's not like they're inherently strong on their own. It's just their implementation and availability. With the mortar, I feel personally like it already verges on the edge of being overpowered. And with these new combinations that the rework will allow for, it's easily going to cross that line in my book. We know that the devs are looking to tackle status effects as their next kind of PvP balance effort, similar to how they tackled shields in TU15. So I'm hoping that they might bundle the mortar in with some of that stuff and give it some PvP adjustments so we can avoid this becoming an issue. But yeah, without any further changes, I can guarantee that the mortar artificer builds are going to cause a lot of headaches once the rework goes live, so I certainly hope that this can be avoided. Alright, and then last up we come to one that a lot of people have voiced concern over already. Personally, I'm a little less worried than most, primarily because I'm waiting to see what they do with it since we have such limited information, so I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt at this point, but I do think it's worth mentioning to underscore the importance of getting it right, and that's the reintroduction of specialization weapons into PvP, more specifically the DZ, since they still exist in Conflict. Most people say that this is certain doom, and I can't blame them. These things were heavily imbalanced in year one, but the reason I'm willing to give it a shot is actually a reason I laid out in an entire video months back, I think, when this was still fresh news, and that's that I don't believe this dev team at this point in year 4 would purposefully go back and undo such a welcomed change of removing them unless they had some sort of goal or specific plan for what to do with them. Like, they're not just sitting around and saying, you know what, let's go back and bring back spec weapons into PvP just for fun. You know, there are far more important PvP things they could be focusing on or other areas of the game to dedicate time to. They've specifically chosen to go back and reintroduce these things into the PvP experience, and I'm willing to see their plan out and see what it looks like. I've always thought spec weapons could really enhance PvP if they were treated much more carefully. For example, make their bonuses more than just, hey, I'm going to absolutely annihilate you in one shot, as well as actually ensuring the ammo for them is gained in only very specific and worthwhile ways. Make it so that the TAC-50 rewards good aim. Make it so the crossbow can be a good offensive or defensive tool. Make the flamethrower a fantastic crowd control tool. And make it so that the ammo is rewarded to those who need and earn it through PvP gameplay. Don't just throw it into supply drops so that people stock up on it before flagging Rogue like they did in year 1. Give it to mana groups every 20 kills they get, or something like that. There's many ways that could go about implementing these things that I do legitimately think could enhance the PvP experience, but many think it is doomed to fail, and I can't necessarily blame their skepticism. So more than anything else, while I am personally optimistic about this change, I did want to briefly talk about it and just underscore to the devs how essential it is to get this part of the rework right. We don't want development time wasted just to give us a repeat of the mess that spec weapons were in PvP in year 1, so I certainly hope that there's a better plan in place this time around. I have faith, let's see how it shakes out, and with that, I conclude my preliminary concerns about the specialization rework Rework. As I said at the start, I am immensely excited for this rework. Was probably my most anticipated feature of TU15 before it got delayed, and I think it does really have the potential to reinvigorate build making in the game, especially with a skill tree that makes you choose between different things. Super excited to have that in the game, and the general freedom that they're bringing is great. It's just that they need to be careful, because as I laid out in this video, that can go awry pretty quickly, so I certainly hope that if nothing else, my thoughts here can just help get a few early issues on their radar if they weren't already. But beyond that, I am just super excited to see what's ahead for TU16. Thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on to be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts about both the Specialization Rework as a whole, as well as my assessment and thoughts about what I think could potentially be problematic with it. Do you agree with my points? Think there's anything I missed? Have your own concerns or questions? Certainly let me know. Any and all of that. As always, I will be very curious to read through your thoughts. And I believe that just about does it for today, everybody. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and until the next one, guys, RogueGold out.